I get to introduce three amazing individuals that are here to be a part of our leadership panel discussion. So please let me help me in welcoming them to the screen as they just popped up there. And I'm going to give a quick introduction to each one of them, and then we're going to get right into it. So the first person I'd like to introduce you to is Emilia Bunea. So Emilia is a leadership scholar and researcher in serious leisure. I like that. She has spent 2 decades as a CEO and CFO and is a passionate marathon runner. Please welcome Emilia there. Hello, give a wave, Emilia, so they know which one you are. There you are. And then next, I'd like to introduce you to Jane Egerton-Idehen. She is a telecommunication executive with over 17 years of experience. She's worked as part of Ericsson's Ghana and Liberia executive leadership team. Jane currently is the country manager in Nigeria and regional sales manager of West Africa for a satellite company. In 2019, Jane received the 50 Leading Ladies in Corporate Nigeria Leadership Awards. Jane, welcome. Can everyone just
thank you?
And then lastly, is we have Rohit Bhargava, and Rohit is an innovation and marketing expert with over 15 years of experience as a strategist at both Ogilvy and Leo Burnett advertising brands on marketing strategy. He is currently the founder of a company called Non-Obvious Company. Rohit is a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of 7 books on marketing, and has delivered sold-out keynote speeches and presentations to audiences all over the world. And if I did my math correctly, between the 3 of you, we have over 122 years of experience on this panel.
Amazing.
Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And so let's just get right into it. Starting off with some questions, and I'm actually going to direct this one. Let's send this one to Jane. So Jane, welcome, because I believe you might be calling in from the furthest right now to this panel. So what do you consider, out of all the experience you had, what do you consider as your greatest success, and how did courage allow you to achieve it?
So if I want to talk about my greatest success, it's just the ability to do what I'm doing now, to do what I'm passionate about, which is positively influencing people. It could be my kids, it could be my husband, my community, other leaders, mentoring. And that ability to do that, to use my voice, for me is the greatest success I can say I've achieved so far. And definitely it takes courage. That's to act, even when you're scared. Because when I started, it was scary. You're like, why do you want to, why are you trying to help people? Why don't you just keep to yourself? Why do you have to do all that? But it takes courage and it takes baby steps. So that for me is my greatest success story. Sure.
I love it. And I'm actually going to ask this one to both Rohit and to Emilia as well. What has been a failure of your past that at the time, like, it felt like this is it, I messed up, but it ended up being an amazing lesson or learning that you had? So how about we start with Emilia? You can share first, and then Rohit, if you would be willing to answer the same question right afterwards.
Sure.
For me, that would be at the time I expatriated for the first time, and I seriously misjudged the cultural difference between my home country and my host country. I expatriated to the Netherlands. I thought I knew the culture. I had worked with Dutch people for a long time. And then I realized, but very late, I realized that there were important differences. And that led to a very difficult accommodation, given that I was leading a very big team and a very important balance sheet over 12 countries. It was an important responsibility, and I wasn't getting what I wanted to get. I wasn't leading. I was managing, but I wasn't leading. I wasn't getting things done through inspiration, getting people to follow. So that would be the biggest failure. What did happen was there was a turning point. Several things happened. We don't have time for the whole story, but at that turning point, I realized that people were the most important thing, and that actually detaching a bit and taking a more of a helicopter view and trying to achieve less directly was actually going to help more. And it ended up being, I think, a great success. But part of the success came from this wisdom that you get when you're down. You know, you're down. You think this is the end of the road, and knowing that you were able to come back from there will actually give you energy in any other circumstance, anytime.
That's great. And Rohit, before you answer, because we're going to get to you, I forgot to mention, I want to make sure everyone knows where people are calling in from, that we have actually, Emilia is calling in from Romania right now. Jane is calling in from Nigeria right now. Yeah. And Rohit, you're calling in from DC. So you're the closest to the NSLS headquarters here in just outside New York City. So Rohit, why don't you, what's your answer to that question of a thing that in the past felt like a failure in the moment, but then turned into some amazing lessons?
Well, I think one of the things that maybe to think about here is I've had lots of failures, as I'm sure everybody else on the panel has. And I think that it's easy now to look at them and say, oh, that was such a great failure. Like we look at these things and we say, well, that was a good failure because I learned this lesson and then I used that lesson to make my life better in some way or to be smarter. And I think that there's maybe too much romanticism around failure when it comes to that. Like I've had failures that I didn't learn anything from. It was just a failure. Like, and I wish I didn't do it. And if I was sitting here telling my younger self advice, maybe I could persuade him not to do it, but maybe he would just fail. And I think that to me, the benefit of failing in any sense is that it gives you a chance to improve your confidence and your resilience. And that doesn't necessarily mean every failure is something that you specifically learn from, but the fact that you did fail and that you had to then get up and find something else. Like I remember I had moved to Australia right after graduating from college because I just wanted to. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a job. I just went. And I couldn't find a job for a long time. And when I finally did find a job and I was there for 2 years, I got fired. And that sucks. I mean, getting fired really sucks. And you feel like a failure because you got fired. And I could tell you that, okay, it wasn't the right fit for me. And I eventually went and found a great job afterwards. And I mean, sure, yes, that stuff does come. But in the moment, it feels like a huge failure. And the biggest challenge to me and the biggest piece of advice I would have is the moment when you fail doesn't make you a failure. And if you can remember that in those moments when you do fail, then it doesn't totally destroy your self-confidence to fail. And that to me is like the most important thing I took away.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm reflecting on some of the darker moments of my life. And in the moment, I like all the self-help I've ever read. I remember what you just said right there. But in the moment, I didn't want to think about that at all. It felt like someone was punching me inside my stomach over and over again. Jane, I want to actually go back to you for a moment. And I'm just curious, where do you go to lean for inspiration to keep you motivated? I mean, 2020 has been a tough year for so many things, and it continues. It just keeps going and going. Where are you drawing inspiration? What are you doing right now to keep your energy, your spirits up, not just for yourself, but the people you lead?
So I think one of the things I've done in the past, I was more inspired because I wanted to do good, I wanted to change the world, or it was the right thing to do. At least everyone said that, and it aligned with my core values. But I've recently, especially in the past couple of years, like 5-6 years, I get inspired by my kids, my daughter to be precise. So I'll give you an example. A couple of years back, my daughter is 9, when she was about 3. I had this very hectic job, so I traveled a lot. I was barely there, But I found that I was struggling with bonding with my daughter. She was literally close to the nanny. She was closer to the nanny. And I struggled. It was a huge struggle for me. I looked for support. I actually wanted to sack the nanny. I thought that would solve it. But a senior friend, like a mentor, advised me not to do that. I should work on the relationship. And I did. And ever since I was able to change that, I kind of had a new awakening, and now I'm more driven to want to be a good model for my kids. And that for me is the inspiration that keeps me going. You know, I'm so driven, I'm passionate about having more women in tech because I'm in tech and because of my journey. But I think my daughter remains that role model. I want to be sure that I can do what I'll be proud to share with my daughter, or she'll be proud to say that was my mom, or becomes a good example for her. So even with the hectic, crazy pandemic, as we've called it, I get inspired every day to keep going, because now they're living with me 24 hours. I don't have to go anywhere because they see me for who I am. They see the way I walk, what I do. I explain it to them. And that has been a huge inspiration for me. So yes, that's what keeps me going.
That's right. It definitely, there's very little separation right now between work life and personal life. And my family, my wife and my daughter are absolutely seeing the professional Tom.
Every part.
But then as soon as this session's over, I guarantee she's gonna be like, let's play a game. And I'll be like, wait, hold on. I was just talking to these amazing panelists. And she doesn't care. She just wants to see me have fun. So I love it. Actually, I would like to ask that same question to Emilia. Emilia, where are you finding inspiration right now? And before you answer, I just want to remind all of the NSLS members that if you have a question for this panel, make sure to drop that question into the chat, because we're going to have a lot of opportunity, into the Q&A section, because we're going to have an opportunity here in just a moment to answer your questions. So Emilia, how about you? Where are you drawing inspiration from right now to keep yourself going?
I think, Tom, I think what you're asking is a very important question, the bigger question, right? What do you do for energy? Where do you draw your energy from? Because there's a lot of assumption out there that leaders are like perpetuum mobile, you know, they create energy from the act of leading. And actually, that's not true. Actually, real leadership, transformational leadership, consumes energy. And there's, you know, more research now that shows that. So my research and the talks that I've had with top CEOs show that it's so important to manage your energy and to find what you're saying, to find sources of energy at work or outside of work, but just be aware that you have to manage that energy, or as they call it, psychological capital. For me, now my life is no longer that of an executive. I'm a non-executive director, I'm a researcher, I'm a runner, I'm an improvisation theater addict. So I draw energy. I have the luxury to draw energy from most everything I do. And you could say every one of them is a bit of a hobby, a passionate hobby for me. So it's easier now. But when I was a very busy executive, that was a very important lesson. I had my kids and I had to spend time with them. But if you come home and you are harried and you're tired and you just, instead of spending quality time with your children, you just bring to them whatever you bring from work, the tensions, the annoyment, the annoying discussion you had with this person or another, it's not going to help. So you need to have your me time as well. There has to be some selfishness. You know, put your own mask first. Take care of yourself before helping others.
I like it. And I often think about how dangerous it is if we just show our leftovers to our family at home, and how often we give everything to work and professional, and then we go home and they get to see our leftovers over and over again. And I don't think that's fair to them. And so I appreciate you acknowledging that there. Rohit, I have a question for you. Related to knowing that these NSLS members, so Cortland Hardy here asked a question, and I'm going to direct it at you, is how are you able to find yourself trusting other people, maybe in the currently, if this is someone who might have let you down in the past? You know, like NSLS members are part of chapters and they often have to lead teams, and it's challenging because we give them an assignment and then maybe they don't do it or they let us down. How do we get that trust back? How do we rely on people versus be like, forget it, I'm just going to do it myself because it's easier, it's faster. But to be a leader, it's hard to do that. There needs to be more than just me.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first thing that I have always done is I've tried to remember that expecting someone to do it exactly like I would do it is not a fair expectation unless I've told them exactly how I would want it, right? But even then, your challenge is often that you're unwilling to let go of these things. And to me, trust or re-earning trust, which was part of the question, like someone let you down and now you just don't know if you can trust them. To me, the answer to that challenge comes from empathy. And what I mean by that is when someone lets you down, it's important to understand why they let you down, right? Because some people will let you down because they're just unreliable, or because they were actually trying to impact your work negatively. They had a negative intent. But most of the time, it's because of something else. Maybe they didn't understand what you meant or what you needed. Maybe they had a serious personal crisis or a family emergency, and therefore they weren't able to show up. Maybe they just didn't know how to do stuff. And now, a couple months later, after having studied and figured stuff out, they're like, oh, that's how I should have done it, right? Because people get smarter over time. I mean, most people do, hopefully. And so I think that really it falls on you to have that empathy, right? I mean, here's a perfect example. We send people emails, and then we wonder whether they read it, and we get angry when they haven't gotten back to us in a certain amount of time. And instead of doing that, I think that it's a real skill set to be able to follow up without judgment. So when I send somebody an email, if they haven't gotten back to me in 2 days, if I have to send them another note, my next note doesn't say, hey, what's wrong with you? Why didn't you get back to me? Like, can you possibly be any ruder than you are right now, not responding to me in the time that I expected? That's not what I do. I say, hey, I know things gotten busy. I just wanted to put this at the front of your inbox. Then if they don't get back to you, you do it again. Then you do it again. Like, there are some people who I've literally in my past emailed 9 times without getting angry. And on the 9th time, they're like, thank you for following up. I really appreciate it. And you would think that getting 9 emails about the same thing would be annoying. But that's not what's annoying. What's annoying is somebody judging you for not getting back to them. That's what's annoying.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. There's some good wisdom in there. And actually, Rohit, can we stay with you? And then we're actually going to go Emilia, then to Jane with the same question, because this is Courtney Beeman is asking this question, but I'm going to modify it just slightly, because I remember back when I was in college, I remember at one point I was so confused about what I should do with my life. And I remember I was walking out of the campus and I looked up and I was like, just tell me what I need to do. Like, what's my career path? Because the number one question adults often ask college students is, so what are you getting your degree in? What are you going to do? So many of these NSLS members are struggling with that question right now. So Rohit, what would you say? What would be your advice to helping someone to discover what it is they're supposed to do with their career path? And then again, we'll go to Emilia and then to Jane.
The biggest piece of advice I could give to people is treat your career path a little like you would treat your next meal at a restaurant, whenever that would be. Like, if you went to a restaurant and you ordered chicken, you wouldn't think in that moment, oh man, now I have to eat chicken for the next 10 years of my life because I just ordered it once. That's not how a restaurant works. That's not how a career works either. You're going to do many different things. The era of going to a company and working there for 40 years and then retiring to get a watch is not the business climate that anyone is graduating into right now. And so, and I think most people don't have that expectation. And so if you don't have the expectation that you're going to stay at the same place for 40 years, why would you have the expectation that the career that you first start in right when you graduate has to be the same one you're doing 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road? What's actually going to happen for most people is they'll start working in some job. They'll have friends who are doing other stuff. They'll look at the friends who are really having a great time doing something and say to themselves, that looks way more awesome than what I'm doing now. And then they'll go to their friend and say, hey, maybe I can start doing that with you. And then people start companies. They move from one brand to another. I mean, that's how someone's career path goes. It doesn't help you choose a major, right? I have a personal perspective on choosing a major, which is it should be something that you love, because when you choose a major, you have to take a lot of classes in it. And nothing sucks worse than choosing a major you hate and then having to take 12 classes in the thing you hate. So choose something you actually really like and hopefully that you're good at. But from a career point of view, be willing to change and don't feel like the thing you do first has to be the thing you're always going to do, because it just doesn't work that way.
Right. And Emilia, what about you? What would you say to these NSLS members who are struggling with either what's my major, what's my career path, and what should I be doing with my life?
Well, I really loved Rohit's metaphor only I would tell them not to be too nervous if the restaurant doesn't offer them that many options, because sometimes that happens, right? You find only 2 or 3 options on the menu and you think, damn. And the problem is you always have this FOMO. You think, oh, damn, my friends are in this other restaurant and they have 12 options on the menu. And here I am stuck with only 3 or 2 or 1. I think any work, like any relationship, requires work. You need to work on it. So I would tell them, I would advise a bit of patience. You got, I don't know, a cookie factory job. I'm just making it up. Don't give up on it from the beginning, because there will be value to discover there. And there's so much to learn in a first job, wherever it is, in whatever industry, in almost whatever position you are in. There's so much to learn just in terms of, group dynamics and what being reliable means, and what follow-up means, and all of these things that you might know theoretically, you actually need to live them. And yes, you won't be stuck there forever, and you will adjust and adapt and find your next step afterwards. But give it a bit of time and find your meaning. There's so much meaning you can find if you try a bit. No, don't expect the whole story, to be delivered to you, Netflix-like, very nicely, for you to live. You have to create it.
Yeah, that's great. And so, Jane, I want to go to you with it, and maybe slightly a modification here is, think back to when you were of their age, like young 20s, maybe even late teens. What were you thinking, and what would you tell them as your advice moving forward?
So if I talk to the younger Jane, so I studied engineering, so I already thought I knew it, because I was like very goal driven. I write my yearly goals, 5-year goal plan, 10-year goal plan. So I saw myself on a certain career path, and I was really focused in trying to achieve it. But one thing I will say is that you have to stay open. Along the line, I always say I stumbled into sales, and that's how I got into management. It wasn't deliberate. It's just about staying open and exposing yourself. There was a project that was offered. Now we're talking about courage, and nobody wanted to do that project. At that time, as an engineer, I had so much time in my hand. I'm like, I can do it. It doesn't change anything. So I took on that project. And one of the things that became clear in running that project for 9 months, other people, not me. So it's a journey. You're getting to know yourself. You actually don't fully know your potential. Other people discovered in running that project, I was so good in communicating, engaging, and building relationships with others. At the end of that 9-month project, I kind of knew everybody in the project. It was for a client. So, like the head of the department was like, you should come work for me as a salesperson. You're so good. But it was strange to me because I was technical. I had my goal plan. I knew what I wanted to be. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do sales. I have nothing. It took a lot of people to convince me to just try it out. So I will say to you, just like, if you're the goal driven, you got it all figured out, you think you're studying this major and that's where you're going to end up. You're also evolving, growing as a person, getting to understand your strengths. You fully don't know your strengths. Please stay open. Just be present sometimes and stay open, because you're getting to know yourself, and be willing to expose yourself to different things. Take risks. Try something new. Try something different in the menu. If I go with Rohit's analogy, try a burger, then sometime you try something else. You're getting to really discover yourself.
I love it. I love it. And I'm paying attention to the chat over here. And as soon as you said the words, I set a lot of goals and I keep track of them, is like NSLS members, that's their code word. Goal setting and accountability. They're all about it. And so I have another question, and I actually, selfishly, I want to hear from all of you on this question. And it comes up from a student who asked this question here, is 2020 obviously has been a transformational year for so many people. What's something that on January 1st, 2020, you truly believed about the world? Like you believed was true, but now you're not so sure. Like your thought process has evolved, or something in you has changed because of all the actions and everything that's happened in the world. And so I know it's a a big question, but maybe let's see if Jane, do you feel like you want to tackle it first, and then we'll go Emilia and then Rohit?
I think one of the things I've realized is that there's a humanity in all of us. You know, you sometimes feel like some people have negative intentions and positive intentions, and we easily put labels on people. I tend to like, you put a label, oh, I had a bad transaction with that person. I don't want to deal with them again. I'm going to avoid them. But what I found out, especially with the COVID and when we all went into lockdown, everyone was reaching out to people. Like people I haven't spoken to in 20 years, call me out of the blues, checking up. Are you doing okay? How are you doing? People just wanted to help each other. And that really gave me a different perspective. Like everybody has something good in them. Like Rohit was earlier saying, people might be going through a phase and you see a part of them, or because in a transaction, your interests don't align, you see a part of them you don't like, or in managing them, they're going through a phase, they tend to come across as the personalities don't work for you. But you'll be shocked that in every one of us, there's something good. So maybe we could flip the script. And next time you see somebody, just consider there might be something good in them, but you just haven't figured it out. And that's one of the biggest things that just hit me this whole COVID period. Like there is something good in everyone.
I love that. And Emilia, we'll go to you in just a second, because this reminds me, Jane, of what you're saying, of two famous sayings. One is, if we all put our problems on the table, you'd be quick to pull yours back. Yeah. Because everyone has their own struggle going on, and oftentimes it's behind the scenes. And then the second thing I remember, I heard someone tell me once, is that try to treat everyone you interact with as if it's their last day. Not your last day, but their last day, and see
I like that one.
Treat them differently. Interesting. Emilia, how about you? What's something that you started the year and you're like, this is a truth in the world, but now maybe you've shifted?
I think mine would be much more modest, and it would have had to do with, I really believed you cannot lead at a distance. You cannot lead virtually, at least not sustainably, not for a long time. And I see that with with the people I talk to, with the companies I'm on the board of. They found solutions, they found ways, and they keep their people engaged, and in a way more engaged than ever, because of this whole mix between private and work that you were mentioning before. They got to know their people better. Their people got to know them more personally. There's another kind of leadership relationship that's being formed.
Great, love it. And how about you, Rohit?
I'd say, my career experience has been that I spent most of my career up until I turned 40, 5 years ago, working for someone. And then I became an entrepreneur and controlled my own time and started working from home and being remote. So, I've been working remotely, and now, of course, we all have to do it. In January, I would have thought you pick one fork in the road. You either do this entrepreneurship thing and you work as a freelancer and you join the gig economy and you work on your own terms, sometimes from a beach in Bali, or more reasonably once you have kids, like, in a place where you can stay, or you work for someone else and you go to the office. And I think now one of my great sources of hope is that because of this pandemic, so many people learned how to work remotely that I don't think work is going to move to only remote. I think what's going to happen for most people is they'll stop going into the office 5 days a week, because they understood that when they were working remotely, there were some good things and some bad things. I mean, yeah, it can get lonely and you miss the colleagueship and you miss being able to go out to lunch and the things that made going into the office good, but you don't miss sitting on the train for an hour in the morning and in the evening getting home. You don't miss the commute. You don't miss the fact that every time you go to the office, whenever you try and get actual work done, somebody's always stopping by your office to bother you with something else, and so you end up going home with this stack of work that you haven't gotten done yet because you had so many meetings. And so I think what's going to happen is we'll have this hybrid way of working where people will say, okay, I'm going to go into the office 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, and when I'm in the office, I'll do all my meetings, and when I'm working from home, I'm not going to do any Zoom meetings because I already did them when I was in the office. And when I work from home, I'm actually going to work. I'm going to think, I'm going to write, I'm going to produce, I'm going to come up with great ideas. I'm going to do all the stuff that I wish I had time for. And I'm going to do that without going into the office. And there's so many beautiful things that could come from that, right? People who had better relationships with their family, they would get more sleep, they would be healthier, they would spend less time being angry about their commute or all of the other things that generally make people angry. I mean, all of these things will come from this new hybrid future of work. So that to me is like a really beautiful thing that I would not have guessed at in January.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. And that is great answers from across the board. And I have another one because we are coming closer to the end of the time. So I'm trying to get as many of their questions in as possible. Something you three should know about NSLS is it is an extremely diverse organization of students and members from all over the world, whether they're studying in the United States or internationally. In fact, while I queue up this question, I'm going to ask the members, if you are a student who is born outside of the United States, can you just share where you were born so we can see some of these other countries show up on the screen here to learn about this group? And the question then goes, and I'm going to give it to Emilia for this one, and feel free if the two others have thoughts on it to let me know. But Emilia, how would you, and this is coming from Kate Hudson, and she's a member of NSLS, and she asked, how do you overcome cultural barriers to create effective leadership, especially in diverse groups? So maybe not everyone comes from the same city or town or country or background. How do you create that? How do you cross the barriers culturally to be able to create the leadership and the team dynamic that needs to happen?
Well, of course, part of the answer depends on what the cultural difference is, right? If you're going from a low power distance to a high power distance culture, for instance, you should be aware of that and treat people differently. But there are some common things, I think, that work for any cultural diversity situation. And that has to do with quickly creating trust. You know who knows that very well? Our children who go to international schools, because there they know how to create trust and relationships very quickly. They know that people, friends come and go, so they need to move quickly, they need to establish quickly who they are. And the principle is the same. Show yourself very soon. So show who you are. You might sound a bit loud, you might sound a bit unsubtle, but state your values, say what you are about, say what you believe in, so that people can have sooner the feeling that they trust you, because trust is universal. No matter what the culture is, trust is the basis for any leadership, any relationship, but especially a leadership relationship. And then, of course, there's the other 200 nuances that we don't have time to discuss.
Exactly. That can go on and on. And if either of the other two have a thoughts on it, let me know. Before you do that, and Jane, I'll jump to you in just a moment. I just want to let Derek, who's an NSLS member who doesn't think that this is live, I want to let him know it is live, because I see your comment, and I'm letting you know it is live. And also I want to let everyone know just some of the countries: Uganda, Haiti, Nigeria, Puerto Rico, Louisiana, Frankfurt, Germany, hello, wie geht's dir? Trinidad and Tobago, Brazil, Albania, all of France. There's so many students and members represented from all over the world. So it's amazing. So Jane, did you have some thoughts on that?
Oh, yes, I do. By the way, was the question from really Kate Hudson, the Kate Hudson?
Yes. She is an NSLS member.
I'm a big fan. Okay, I'll just share some experience, because one of my roles, during my career, I had to move to a different country with an entirely different culture. And this was my experience. A good way is to connect. And I think there's always something about, there's the humanity, there's something about, no matter the culture, we're all human beings first. And I was having the same chat just before this session with a mentee of mine. She's going to Stanford, and she was so worried about all the cultures and how she's going to blend in. But something else that Rohit has said, I'm not quoting Rohit, is empathy. If you connect and consider you could be in the person's shoes. So when you don't like their food or their color, maybe just consider probably your own food is a bit different for them. But connection means, finding ways to bond. Immerse yourself in that culture if you can. Try to understand their movies and their food and their language. It could be different, it could be weird, but in trying to understand, I think you find ways to connect. And those are some of the things I did when I had to move into a country that was an entirely different culture from where I was coming from. And it was a good experience at the end of the day.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. I just had one quick thought to add there, which is just being an observer of culture. I mean, I'm lucky that I've been to almost 100 countries in my life because I traveled a lot when I was young, and also I've spoken in a lot of countries. And so, like when I went to Brazil, for example, when you watch people before the pandemic, of course, you would see that in Sao Paulo, they greet one another with one kiss, and in Rio, they greet people with two kisses. And after about 2 minutes of watching that, immediately you know how to greet someone, whether you're in one city or the other, just because you paid attention. So I didn't need to read a book about that. I didn't need to read the 12 things to know before you go to Brazil. All I needed to do was pay attention and keep my eyes open. And I think that's so important for empathy and for understanding other cultures.
I love it. And I believe, I'm sure someone's going to correct me in the chat, but I believe today is Mahatma Gandhi's birthday. And so I believe, and so I have a quote from him: "Our ability to reach unity and diversity will be the beauty and the test of our civilization."
Oh, yeah.
And if you think about where we're at in the world right now and what's happening in various parts of the world, and here in the United States with diversity, I feel like that continues to be a very true statement. We have 90 seconds left. And so I just want to take that moment to thank all of you for being here with us. And I also want to challenge the NSLS members to take a screenshot of this group right here and share on social media one of your largest takeaways, your best takeaways from this group, and tag each other. Also make sure you use that hashtag courage NSLS. Also tag at the NSLS. And of course you can find all of us here in our tags as well. But I want to thank each one of you for being a part of the panel. The value and the knowledge and the wisdom here is invaluable, and I know the members are going to appreciate it as much as we did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys.